This girl at the front desk, with such sincerity in her eyes, was unintentionally giving him a precious gift, an escape. But to accept it, he had to bury a massive secret, the secret that he owned everything she could see. How long can he keep up the lie? And what is the price of the truth? Before we find out, what city are you listening to this story from? A small comment about your location would be a huge encouragement for us. Our goal is to reach 1,000 subscribers. Each of your subscriptions is a source of motivation for me to continue sharing more interesting things. Please join me by clicking the subscribe button. Now, let's begin. William Fraser stepped into the lobby of the Seaside Hotel, his own hotel, though no one here would recognize him just yet. At 32, he was the CEO of a global hotel empire, a billionaire whose life was a whirlwind of boardrooms and private jets. But today, after a grueling transatlantic flight and a tense conference call that had left his voice raw, he looked nothing like the polished tycoon in the glossy magazines. His dark hair was tousled, his broad shoulders slumped under a simple gray t-shirt and jeans. High-end fabrics, sure, but understated enough to blend in. He paused for a moment, rubbing his temple as the salty breeze from the open doors mixed with the faint scent of fresh coffee from the nearby cafe. What he needed was a quiet room, a stiff drink, and maybe a walk on the beach to clear his head. But first, check in. As he approached the front desk, he noticed the young woman behind it, her posture straight and welcoming, her dark hair pulled back neatly under the hotel's uniform cap. "Good afternoon, sir," Mary said with a genuine smile, her voice steady and kind. "Welcome to Seaside Haven. How can I help you today?" Mary Herrera had been manning the desk for hours, her shift dragging on in the quiet afternoon lull. She came from a modest family, the kind that valued hard work over handouts, and she'd built her life on principles, integrity, resilience, and a quiet determination to help others without expecting anything in return. Her warm brown eyes scanned the lobby with practiced ease, always ready to spot a guest in need. When she saw William approaching, something tugged at her. He looked exhausted, out of place, like a guy who'd scraped together his savings for this one big trip and was now overwhelmed by it all. Poor thing, she thought. He seems like he's traveling alone for the first time. I have to make sure he has a memorable stay, the good kind. William leaned on the counter, forcing a casual grin despite the jet lag gnawing at him. He hadn't planned on this charade, but as he opened his mouth to give his name, he hesitated. Hi, I'm checking in. Name's Will. Just Will. And, I was wondering about some local spots. You know, nothing too fancy. What's nearby that's worth seeing?" Mary tilted her head slightly, her intuition kicking in. He was polite, but that awkward pause, the way he glanced around like the lobby was foreign territory, it screamed, first time, budget traveler. She nodded sympathetically, pulling out a brochure from under the counter. "Of course, Will. We've got some great options that won't break the bank. The beach is just a short walk, but if you're heading to the lighthouse or the boardwalk, skip the taxis. They're overpriced. Catch the number 5 bus right outside. It's only $1.50 and runs every 15 minutes. And for food, avoid the fancy restaurant across the street. There's a food truck at the end of the pier with the best fish tacos, fresh, cheap, and authentic." William blinked, caught off guard. No one ever spoke to him like this. Usually it was all deference and flattery, eyes lighting up at the mention of his name or the flash of his black card. But here was this woman treating him like a regular guy. A spark of curiosity flickered in his chest. When was the last time someone saw him without the filter of his wealth? Years, maybe. He could correct her, flash his ID, and watch the recognition dawn. But instead, a mischievous thought took hold. What if he played along? Just for a bit. To feel Normal. Real. He chuckled softly, rubbing the back of his neck. Fish tacos from a truck, huh? Sounds adventurous. Thanks for the tip, I appreciate it. I really don't know my way around these things. Mary's smile widened, a quiet satisfaction blooming inside her. Helping someone like this felt right, aligned with who she was. A woman who believed in lifting others up, no strings attached. She didn't pity him. She respected the effort it took for anyone to step out of their comfort zone. No problem at all. Everyone starts somewhere. Let me get you checked in quickly so you can rest up. As she typed into the computer, William watched her, intrigued by her straightforward kindness. It was refreshing, uncalculated. For the first time in a long while, he felt seen, not as a powerhouse, but as just a man. And, oddly, he wanted more of that. Mary handed him the keycard, her mind already picturing him navigating the bus route successfully. Little victories, she thought. That's what makes a trip special. Little did she know this simple exchange had just set the stage for something far more complicated and utterly captivating. As Mary slid the keycard across the counter, William pocketed it with a nod, but he didn't step away. Instead, he lingered, his fingers drumming lightly on the polished wood, as if gathering his thoughts. The lobby hummed softly around them, the distant clink of glasses from the bar, the faint murmur of guests checking out nearby. He glanced at her name tag, committing Mary to memory, and felt a strange pull. This wasn't like him. William Fraser didn't linger. He commanded rooms and moved on. But here, in this unassuming moment, he wondered what it would be like to shed that skin just for a while, to be someone without expectations weighing him down. "Thanks again for the advice," he said, his voice carrying a hint of that feigned awkwardness, though his blue eyes held a spark of genuine amusement. "You know, I really am clueless about all this. First time in a place like this without a plan. What if you could, I don't know, guide me a bit? Be my unofficial advisor for this stay? I'd owe you big time." Mary paused, her hands stilling on the keyboard. The request caught her off guard, not because it was bold, but because it came wrapped in such earnest vulnerability. She studied him for a beat, noting the way his shoulders relaxed as he spoke, like he was testing the waters of something new. He didn't strike her as pushy. If anything, there was a boyish charm in his hesitation, mixed with an odd sincerity that made her pause. A lost traveler asking for help? That was in her wheelhouse. But something nagged at her, a flicker of caution. She wasn't one to jump into things blindly. Her life had taught her to weigh intentions, to protect her boundaries. Still, refusing felt wrong. Her principles kicked in hard. If someone needed a hand, you gave it, no strings. That's how she'd been raised, and it was how she lived. She shook her head lightly, a small smile tugging at her lips despite herself. "Advisor? That's a fancy title for just pointing out bus stops." "Look, Will, I'm happy to help where I can. It's part of the job. But I don't take tips or anything like that. Just ask if you need directions or whatever." William felt a rush of intrigue deepen. She wasn't biting at the offer of compensation. In fact, she seemed almost offended by the idea. It was refreshing, this straightforward integrity. A part of him questioned his impulse. Why drag this out? He could end the charade now, reveal who he was, and watch the dynamic shift to the usual deference. But another part, quieter and long buried, craved this authenticity. For years, every interaction had been tainted by his status, people angling for favors, alliances, or scraps of his empire. Here was someone seeing him as just a guy, flawed and fumbling. It stirred a curiosity he hadn't felt in ages, and beneath it, a budding admiration for her unyielding self-respect. He decided to push a little further, keeping his tone light, almost playful. "Come on, think of it as a favor to a hapless tourist. I'll be your student. You teach me how to survive on a shoestring. No money involved, promise, just real talk." Mary crossed her arms, leaning back slightly as she sized him up again. He was persistent, but not in a creepy way. There was a genuineness in his eyes that made her soften. Odd, yes, but harmless. And truthfully, a small thrill sparked in her, helping someone discover the simple joys of this town, the ones that didn't require a fat wallet. It reminded her of her own dreams, of building something real and welcoming, like that little bed and breakfast she'd sketched out in her notebook during slow shifts. Refusing outright would eat at her. It went against everything she stood for. Fine, she thought. A loose agreement, nothing binding. What harm could it do? All right, fine, she conceded with a sigh that turned into a chuckle. But don't call it advising, sounds too official. I'll be your survival coach, I guess. Here's a start. She reached under the counter and pulled out a folded map of the town, her pen quickly circling spots in red ink. The budget eateries, the free walking trails, the hidden cove where locals picnicked. Stick to these, and you'll be golden. No fancy stuff, promise me that. William took the map, his fingers brushing hers briefly, sending an unexpected warmth through him.
He unfolded it, pretending to study the markings with wide-eyed interest. But inside, a quiet excitement built. This was it, a silent pact, locking her into his world without her knowing its true scope. How long could he keep up the act? And what would happen when the truth surfaced? For now, though, he savored the novelty. The way her guidance felt like a bridge to something unscripted. Mary watched him trace the roots with his finger, a sense of quiet satisfaction settling in. She'd done a good deed, nothing more. But as he thanked her one last time and headed toward the elevators, she couldn't shake a tiny spark of curiosity. Who was this guy, really? And why did helping him feel oddly invigorating? Little did she realize, this offhand agreement had just pulled her into a game far bigger than bus routes and cheap eats. As Mary's shift wound down that afternoon, the sun dipped lower over the seaside town, casting a golden hue through the hotel windows. She clocked out with her usual efficiency, slinging her bag over her shoulder and stepping into the fresh air outside. Waiting near the entrance, as promised in their loose agreement, was Will, leaning against a lamppost, map in hand, looking every bit the eager but out-of-his-depth tourist. She waved him over, a stack of crumpled coupons clutched in her other hand like a secret weapon. "Ready for lesson 1?" she called out lightly, her voice carrying that practical warmth that made people feel capable, not small. They headed to the local supermarket a few blocks away, the kind with fluorescent lights and aisles crammed with everyday essentials. Mary had shopped here 100 times, navigating the deals with the precision of someone who'd learned early on that every penny counted. For her, this wasn't just errands, it was a skill. A quiet act of independence that echoed her deeper dreams, of running her own place someday, where value came from heart, not hype. She handed Will the coupons, fanning them out like cards in a game. These are your lifeline. Clip, compare, conquer. Start with the basics: milk, bread, maybe some fruit. No impulse buys. Will took the stack, his fingers brushing the worn edges, and felt a mix of amusement and unease stir inside him. William Fraser, the man who dined on caviar flown in from Russia and sealed deals over vintage wine, now holding flyers for 2-for-1 cereal. It was absurd, yet oddly liberating. He pushed the cart down the dairy aisle, the wheels squeaking faintly, and reached for a carton of organic almond milk, the priciest one on the shelf, gleaming under the lights. Habit, pure and simple. But before he could drop it in, Mary's hand shot out, gentle but firm, steering him toward the store brand a shelf down. "Whoa, hold up," she said with a chuckle that softened the correction. "That's the trap, the fancy label. Check the price per ounce. This one's half the cost and tastes the same. Trust me, I've tested it." He paused, carton hovering, and glanced at her. There was no judgment in her eyes, just that steady confidence, born from real life, not boardrooms. A flicker of irritation hit him first. Who was she to school him on this? But it melted quickly into something warmer. Respect. Her quick mind, the way she scanned labels like a strategist plotting moves. It was impressive. Efficient in a world he rarely touched. He set the expensive one back, grabbing the cheaper option instead. "All right, coach." Lesson learned. But what if I crave the fancy stuff? Mary shook her head, smiling as she led him to the produce section. Cravings are fine, but smart choices keep you going longer. See these apples? Go for the bag, not the singles. Saves $1 easy. As they moved, he fumbled with the coupons, trying to match one for peanut butter, his broad hands clumsy with the tiny print. He nearly grabbed the gourmet brand again, infused with honey and sea salt, before she nudged him toward the generic jar. "Nope, this one's on sale. Pair it with the coupon and it's practically free." The banter flowed naturally, light and teasing, punctuating the hum of shoppers around them. Will knocked over a display of canned soups at one point, sending a few rolling, and Mary laughed outright as she helped pick them up. "See? Even the pros slip, but that's how you learn." Inside, William felt a tug he couldn't ignore. This wasn't just play acting anymore. Her resourcefulness, the ease with which she turned mundane tasks into triumphs, sparked a genuine curiosity. Who was this woman, thriving in simplicity while he commanded empires? It frustrated him how out of his element he was, yet thrilled him too, like discovering a new language. By the time they reached the checkout, the cart held sensible picks, basics that added up to far less than his usual lunch tab. Mary watched the total ring up, nodding approval as he swiped his card. Nothing flashy, just a plain debit one he'd pulled from his wallet. As they stepped out with bags in hand, the evening breeze carrying hints of salt and grilled food from nearby stands, he turned to her. "Okay, I admit it. That was eye-opening. You're good at this." She shrugged, but her eyes sparkled with quiet pride. "It's just life, Will. Stick with it, and you'll see." Little did she know this simple outing had planted seeds of admiration on his side and a subtle intrigue on hers that would grow into something neither expected, challenging everything they thought they knew about value and each other. The next morning dawned bright over the seaside town with the kind of crisp air that promised a perfect day for the beach. Mary met Will outside the hotel, her practical sneakers laced up and a light backpack slung over one shoulder, packed with water and sunscreen she'd grabbed on sale. She eyed him with that mix of amusement and determination she'd honed from years of making do. He looked ready enough in his casual jeans and shirt, but she could tell he was still adjusting to this no-frills adventure. "No taxi today," she declared as they started walking toward the bus stop. "We're taking the number 5. It's efficient, cheap, and you'll get the real feel of the place." Will nodded, falling into step beside her, the grocery bags from yesterday's lesson tucked away in his room like trophies from a foreign land. A taxi. He could have summoned a private car with a snap, but that would have shattered the illusion. Instead, he felt a quiet thrill at the novelty mixed with a touch of apprehension. The bus stop was a simple shelter buzzing with locals. Commuters in work clothes, a mom with a stroller, an older man reading a newspaper. As the bus pulled up with a hiss of brakes, packed to the gills for the post-rush trickle, Mary flashed her pass and motioned him on. "Stick close," she said over the din. "It gets bumpy." The doors folded open and they squeezed aboard. the air thick with the scent of coffee thermoses and faint ocean salt from open windows. Will gripped a pole as the bus lurched forward, bodies shifting around him like a living wave. He was used to leather seats and solitude in his chauffeured rides, but here, elbows brushed, conversations overlapped in snippets. A woman laughing about her shift, a kid chattering about school. His foot slipped on a turn, sending him stumbling into a burly construction worker, who grumbled but steadied him with a nod. "Sorry," Will muttered, cheeks warming in a way that surprised him. Embarrassment? He hadn't felt that in boardrooms where billions hung in the balance. Mary, wedged beside him, couldn't hold back a grin. "Balance is key," she whispered, her voice teasing but kind. "Bend your knees a bit, like this." She demonstrated, steady as a rock, her posture a testament to countless rides like this one. Another jolt came as the bus hit a pothole, and Will's hand slipped from the pole, pitching him forward. He caught himself just in time, but not before knocking Mary's backpack askew. She laughed softly, readjusting it without missing a beat. "See? It's all about adapting. Taxis don't teach you that." As the bus rumbled on, weaving through traffic toward the coast, Will found himself watching the world outside. The colorful storefronts, kids on bikes, the everyday rhythm he'd always flown over. But it was the inside that hit harder. The quiet camaraderie, the way people made space for each other without fanfare. A young couple shared earbuds, heads close. An elderly woman offered her seat to the mom with a stroller. This was life unfiltered, raw and vibrant, far from his isolated penthouses. A pang stirred in him, not pity, but a genuine envy for the ease of it all. Mary's presence amplified it. She navigated the crowd with effortless grace, chatting briefly with a regular rider about the weather. Her resilience, that quiet strength, drew him in deeper, making his own world feel hollow by comparison. The bus finally groaned to a stop near the beach, doors opening to a rush of salty breeze. They stepped off, Will's legs a bit unsteady, but his mind buzzing. He brushed sand from his jeans, glancing at her with a rueful smile. "That was intense, but I get it now. It's not just getting there, it's the ride." Mary nodded, leading the way to the shore where waves lapped gently. "Exactly. Builds character." As they walked, the sun warming their faces, she felt a subtle shift, too. A spark of enjoyment in sharing this slice of her world. Little did either know, this bumpy journey had cracked open doors to vulnerabilities and connections that would soon redefine everything between them. As the afternoon sun filtered through the leaves of the seaside park, Mary and Will found a shady bench after their beach stroll, each holding a cone from the nearby vendor. Simple vanilla for her, chocolate for him. Nothing fancy, but perfectly satisfying. The waves crashed faintly in the distance, mixing with the chatter of families picnicking nearby and kids chasing frisbees on the grass. Mary licked a drip from her cone, feeling that easy contentment from sharing these small moments. Guiding Will through the town's hidden gems had started as a kindness, but now it carried a subtle spark, like rediscovering her own joys through his fresh eyes. He seemed different today, more at ease, his usual awkwardness giving way to genuine laughs. Will savored his ice cream, the cool sweetness a far cry from the gourmet desserts he was used to, but somehow better in this unpretentious setting. Sitting beside her, he felt the pull strengthening, her straightforward wisdom, the way she turned ordinary outings into lessons without preaching. It was drawing him in, making him question the polished isolation of his real life. For a moment, the charade felt less like a game and more like a glimpse of something authentic he'd been missing. But as they chatted about the town's quirky history, the old lighthouse that doubled as a wedding spot, the annual clam festival, a familiar figure approached from the path. It was Elena Vargas, one of his regional directors, sharp-suited and clipboard in hand, likely scouting locations for the company's next expansion. She was heading straight toward them, her eyes scanning the park with that efficient gaze he knew well from meetings. Will's stomach dropped. Recognition flickered in her expression as she spotted him, her steps quickening. "Mr. Fraser," she called out, voice carrying over the breeze. Panic surged through him like a cold wave. If she blew his cover now, everything, the fragile connection with Mary, the escape from his CEO armor, would shatter. He couldn't let that happen. Quick as a flash, he faked a cough, turning it into a full-blown hacking fit, doubling over with dramatic wheezes. Ice cream smeared on his shirt as he clutched his throat, face averted from Elena's direction. "Oh, man," he gasped between coughs, loud enough to draw attention but not alarm. "Something in the cone. Allergic reaction?" Mary's eyes widened in concern, her cone forgotten as she jumped up, hand on his back. "Will?" "Hey, breathe easy. Is it nuts?" The vendor said no cross-contamination, but... She glanced around, spotting the approaching woman but dismissing her as a bystander. Without hesitation, she grabbed his arm. "Come on, let's get you out of here." Fresh air by the fountain might help. She pulled him along the path, away from Elena, her grip firm and reassuring, like she'd handled a dozen emergencies in her shifts. Elena halted, confusion knitting her brows as they hurried off. She opened her mouth to call again, but the coughing figure was already retreating, and she shook her head, muttering about tourists before continuing her walk. Close call, she thought, not piecing it together yet. Will kept up the act until they rounded a cluster of trees, out of sight, his coughs tapering off into chuckles he couldn't suppress. Mary stopped, hands on hips, eyeing him with a mix of worry and skepticism. "You okay now?" That came on fast. "Maybe we should grab some water." He straightened, wiping his shirt with a napkin, the adrenaline still buzzing. "Yeah, false alarm. Must have been a brain freeze or something." Inside, relief washed over him, but so did a twinge of guilt. Dodging exposure had been thrilling, like a narrow escape in one of those adventure stories, but it highlighted the fragility of his pretense. Mary's quick thinking had saved the day, her instinct to protect without question stirring something deeper in him. Gratitude, yes, but also a growing respect for her as an equal, someone who'd have his back in a pinch. Mary shook her head, laughing softly as she handed him her untouched water bottle. "You scared me there. Next time, warn me before you go full drama mode." She had no inkling of the truth, chalking it up to a quirky mishap, but the incident left her with a warm glow. Helping him felt natural now, like they were in this together. As they resumed their walk, the park's tranquility returning, Will stole a glance at her, the near miss sharpening his awareness. How much longer could he keep this up? And what would she think if, when, the mask slipped? For now, the secret hung between them, adding an unspoken edge to their budding bond, one that promised both laughter and inevitable reckoning. As the sun began its slow descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in strokes of orange and pink, Mary and Will made their way back to the beach. The day's lessons had worn them both out, the supermarket skirmishes, the bumpy bus ride, even that odd coughing fit in the park that still lingered in Mary's mind as a quirky mishap. They'd grabbed simple sandwiches from a corner deli on the way, nothing fancy, just fresh bread and fillings that hit the spot after all the walking. Now, with the sand still warm underfoot, they settled on a weathered log near the water's edge, the waves providing a rhythmic backdrop that eased the lingering energy from their adventures. Mary unwrapped her sandwich, taking a bite and letting the quiet settle around them. No more teasing tips or quick corrections. The air felt different now, heavier with the unspoken ease that comes after shared exertion. She gazed out at the sea, where the light danced on the crests, and felt a rare moment of openness bubble up. Will had surprised her today, not just with his willingness to stumble through the ordinary, but with the glimpses of vulnerability beneath his awkward charm. It made her want to share a piece of herself, something real amid the light-hearted guidance. "You know,
she started softly, her voice blending with the gentle crash of waves. "All this talk about saving pennies and making do, it's not just survival for me. It's about building something lasting." She paused, tracing a pattern in the sand with her toe. "I've always dreamed of opening my own little bed and breakfast. Nothing grand, just a cozy spot by the sea, with fresh coffee in the mornings and rooms that feel like home. A place where people can unplug, recharge, without all the frills. I've got sketches at home, even a business plan scribbled in a notebook. It's silly, maybe, but it's mine." Will listened, his sandwich forgotten in his hand as her words sank in. For once, he wasn't analyzing it like a potential acquisition, crunching numbers on ROI or market saturation. No, this was different. He heard the passion in her tone, the quiet fire that fueled her vision. It struck him how her dream was rooted in authenticity, in creating warmth for others without needing empires or accolades. His own life flashed before him. The endless acquisitions, the sterile boardrooms, the wealth that bought everything except this kind of simple purpose. A pang hit his chest, sharp and unfamiliar. For the first time, he realized his billions couldn't touch something so pure. A dream woven from resilience and heart, not leverage. He set his sandwich down, turning to face her as the sun dipped lower, casting a golden glow on her features. "That doesn't sound silly at all," he said, his voice steady but laced with a sincerity that surprised even him. "It sounds real. Like something worth chasing."
What made you want that? Mary met his gaze, her eyes reflecting the fading light, and for a moment, the world narrowed to just them, the salt in the air, the distant call of gulls, the unspoken bridge forming between two lives that couldn't have been more different. She shrugged lightly, but her words carried weight. "Growing up, we didn't have much, but my family always made room for people. Holidays with extra plates, neighbors dropping by. I want to capture that. Give folks a spot to breathe, to feel seen without the pressure. It's not about getting rich. It's about making a difference, one guest at a time." As she spoke, Will felt a shift deep inside, like a crack in the facade he'd built over years of deals and detachment. Her determination, veiled in that unassuming strength, drew him in. It mirrored something he'd lost touch with, a reminder that true value lay in connections, not conquests. The sunset deepened, the sky turning to hues of purple, and in that shared silence a real bond took root. Not just teacher and student, but two people glimpsing each other's cores. Mary felt it too, a quiet warmth spreading, making her wonder about this man who'd wandered into her world so unexpectedly. The waves rolled on as the light faded, sealing the moment like a promise. Little did they know, this fragile connection would soon face tests that would either forge it stronger or shatter it entirely. The following morning brought a buzz to the seaside town as the local market came alive, stalls spilling over with fresh produce under colorful awnings that fluttered in the breeze. Mary led Will through the crowded lanes, the air thick with the earthy scent of herbs, the sharp tang of citrus, and the warm aroma of baked goods from a nearby vendor. Vendors called out deals in rhythmic chants. "Fresh tomatoes, 2 for $1, while shoppers haggled with good-natured banter, baskets brimming with vibrant greens and ripe fruits. For Mary, this was second nature, a ritual that grounded her in the simple rhythms of life, reminding her of family outings where every choice mattered. She glanced at Will, who looked wide-eyed amid the chaos, and felt a quiet resolve to show him the value in it all, not just saving money, but savoring the freshness that came from smart picks. "Lesson today? Fresh over fancy," she said lightly, handing him a woven basket. "Feel the weight. Check for bruises. No pre-packaged stuff, that's where they get you." Will nodded,
diving in with that mix of enthusiasm and clumsiness she'd come to expect. He reached for a bunch of glossy apples, the kind displayed prominently, but Mary steered him to a crate of slightly imperfect ones nearby. These are just as sweet, half the price. Beauty's skin deep here. He fumbled a tomato, nearly dropping it into the dirt, and she caught it with a quick laugh, their hands brushing in the save. The moment passed casually, but it lingered, adding to the easy flow between them. As they moved on, bartering for onions and herbs, Will's usual poise cracked in humorous ways. He overpaid for garlic at first, mistaking the vendor's starting price for a steal, until Mary stepped in with a firm counteroffer. "Watch and learn," she murmured, securing the deal with a smile. Inside, William felt the shift. This wasn't his world of negotiations over mergers, but a different power, one rooted in knowledge of the everyday, the kind Mary wielded with effortless grace. For the first time, he recognized a strength that money couldn't buy, a quiet command over life's basics that made his empire feel distant, almost irrelevant. Loaded with bags of veggies, spices, and a fresh loaf of bread, they headed to Mary's small apartment nearby, a cozy space above a bookstore, with a kitchen that smelled faintly of coffee and home-cooked meals. She wasn't one for extravagance. The counters were cluttered with practical tools, a far cry from his chef-equipped kitchens. "Now the real test, cooking," she announced, rolling up her sleeves. Will followed suit, but his attempts were comically off. He chopped onions unevenly, tears streaming as the fumes hit, and nearly burned the garlic in the pan. "Easy there," Mary teased gently, taking the spatula to stir. "Low heat. Patience. It's not a race." They worked side by side, her guiding his hands on the knife for safer slices, their laughter filling the room when he splashed oil everywhere trying to flip veggies. Bit by bit, the mess turned into a simple stir-fry, fragrant with herbs and sizzling softly. As they plated it up and sat at her tiny table, the room grew still. The only sounds the clink of forks and the distant hum of the town outside. No grand conversation, just a shared quiet that spoke volumes, their differences fading in the warmth of collaboration. Mary felt the bond deepen, no longer just helper and helped, but partners in this small victory. Will, tasting the humble meal they'd created together, sensed it too. A connection building, one that challenged his isolated world and hinted at something profoundly real. The afternoon sun hung low over the park, casting long shadows across the grass where a group of seniors had gathered, as they did every weekend, for an impromptu dance session. A portable speaker crackled to life with the strains of a classic waltz, its melody floating gently on the breeze. Simple, unamplified, but full of life. Mary spotted them from the path, her eyes lighting up at the sight of gray-haired couples swaying with easy familiarity, laughter mixing with the music. After their quiet meal, she'd suggested a walk to shake off the day's fullness, but now an idea sparked. "Come on," she said, tugging Will's sleeve with a playful grin. "This is perfect. Proof that fun doesn't cost a dime. Let's join in." Will hesitated, his feet rooted, as he watched the dancers twirl in their comfortable shoes and casual clothes. Dancing? In public, no less? His world was galas with orchestras and crystal chandeliers, where every step was calculated. But here, amid the rustling leaves and distant dog barks, it felt exposed, vulnerable. Still, Mary's enthusiasm was infectious, her hand warm on his arm, pulling him forward before he could protest. "I don't know the steps," he admitted under his breath, but she just waved it off. "Neither do half of them at first. Just follow my lead." She positioned his hand on her waist, her touch light and guiding, and they stepped into the loose circle. The music swelled, and Will moved stiffly at first,
his tall frame awkward as he miscounted the beat, his foot landing squarely on hers. "Ouch, sorry," he muttered, cheeks flushing in a way that surprised him. Mary winced but laughed, her voice a soft ripple. "Lighten up, Will." "It's 1, 2, 3, not a board meeting. Loosen those shoulders." He tried again, but another misstep had them bumping into a smiling, elderly pair who chuckled and spun away without a fuss. Will's frustration bubbled. How could something so basic trip him up? But Mary's grace smoothed it over. She adjusted seamlessly, her movements fluid, like she'd danced through life's bumps 1,000 times. Their banter flowed in whispers between beats. "You're stepping like you're dodging taxes," she teased lightly. "Hey, low blow," he shot back with a grin, his wit sharpening to match hers. The light sarcasm eased the tension, turning his blunders into shared jokes that drew them closer. Gradually, as the song progressed, Will found the rhythm, the steady 1, 2, 3, syncing with his breath, his hand steadying on her back. The park blurred around them, the other dancers fading into a soft backdrop. Then came the moment. Amid a gentle turn, their eyes locked, the laughter dying away into a charged silence. The music wrapped around them like a warm current, the world narrowing to the feel of her hand in his, the subtle sway that felt less like steps and more like harmony. Mary's heart quickened. She saw past his clumsiness to the earnest effort, a vulnerability that made her want this simple joy to stretch on. A part of her wished the song would never end, this unexpected pull drawing her in despite herself. Will felt it too, a spark igniting, beyond the pretense, a real connection humming between them like the melody itself. Her eyes held a depth that mirrored his growing admiration, her presence a reminder of life's unscripted beauty. As the music faded, they slowed to a stop, hands lingering a beat longer than needed. The seniors applauded lightly, but for them, the applause was internal, a quiet acknowledgement of something blooming. Mary broke the gaze first, a soft smile playing on her lips. Not bad for a beginner. But inside the tension lingered, a promise of more, heightening the unspoken bond that would soon face its greatest test. The evening lights twinkled in the hotel ballroom, transforming the space into a warm haven for the annual Employee Appreciation Gala. Soft jazz played from a corner band, mingling with the clink of glasses and murmurs of conversation among staff in their best attire. Simple dresses and ties that spoke of modest celebrations. Mary smoothed her modest black dress, a find from last year's clearance, her heart fluttering with a mix of nerves and quiet pride. Being named Employee of the Year was unexpected. She'd poured her heart into the job, helping guests with that genuine care that came naturally, but awards like this felt like a nod to the life she'd built on her own terms. As the MC called her name, applause rippled through the room, and she stepped onto the stage, cheeks warm under the spotlight. From the back of the crowd, William, watched with a swell of unspoken admiration. He'd slipped in unnoticed, blending with the shadows in his casual shirt and slacks, drawn by an impulse he couldn't ignore. Seeing Mary up there, poised and deserving, stirred something deep. These past days had cracked open his world, showing him value in the everyday she'd taught him. He hadn't planned to stay long, just long enough to witness her moment, but as she accepted the plaque with a gracious smile, thanking her team in that steady voice, a quiet pride bloomed in his chest. This was her element, real and earned, far from his scripted successes. The MC beamed, gesturing to the large screen behind the stage. And now, a special message from our CEO, William Fraser, to congratulate all of you on another outstanding year. The lights dimmed slightly, and the video flickered to life. There he was, William in his element, clad in a tailored suit of fine Italian silk that hugged his broad frame, exuding that effortless authority. His voice boomed through the speakers, deep and commanding. To the incredible team at Seaside Haven, your dedication drives our success. Mary Herrera, your commitment exemplifies what we stand for. Congratulations on Employee of the Year. The room erupted in cheers, hands clapping as colleagues turned to beam at Mary. But she stood frozen, the plaque heavy in her grip, her eyes locked on the screen. The man in the video, polished, powerful, with that same jawline and piercing gaze, was Will. Her Will, the fumbling tourist she'd guided through bus rides and bargain hunts. The pieces slammed together, the odd familiarity, the near miss in the park, the way he dodged questions about his life. Betrayal hit like a wave, crashing over her with a force that stole her breath. All those moments, the laughs, the shared sunsets, the dance, felt like a cruel joke now. She'd opened up, shared her dreams, only to realize he'd been playing a role, turning her kindness into entertainment for a billionaire bored with his world. Tears pricked her eyes, but she blinked them back, her face a mask of composure amid the applause. Inside, everything crumbled. Her trust, her self-respect, the budding warmth she'd dared to feel. How could she have been so blind? This wasn't just a lie. It was a mockery of the values she'd held dear, the integrity she'd fought to maintain in a world that often overlooked people like her. William's heart plummeted as he saw the shift in her expression, the shock widening her eyes, the color draining from her face. He pushed through the crowd instinctively, but stopped short, the weight of his deception slamming into him. This wasn't about exposure. It was the pain etched in her gaze, the raw hurt he'd inflicted without meaning to. His ego, that armored shield of success, shattered in an instant. He'd chased authenticity, but at what cost? Seeing her up there, alone in her devastation, twisted something fundamental inside him. No deal or acquisition had ever felt this devastating. The applause faded, but the silence between them roared, a chasm he'd created. As Mary stepped down, avoiding his desperate glance, the truth hung heavy. Everything had changed, and the road to repair, if there was one, would demand more than he'd ever given. She felt not only betrayed, but like a complete fool. In a moment of ultimate humiliation, a woman must find her inner strength. Send your belief in Mary's resilience by commenting with the keyword strength. Let's see if she will let this lie define her. The days following the gala blurred into a haze of regret for William, the weight of that video revelation pressing down like an unyielding storm. Mary didn't waste a moment. She marched straight to the manager's office that night, her award plaque tucked under her arm like a forgotten prop, and handed in her resignation on a hastily scrawled note. No explanations, no notice, just a clean break from the place that now felt tainted. She slipped out the back door, avoiding the lingering guests, her mind a whirlwind of humiliation and fury. How had she let herself be fooled? Those shared laughs, the sunset talks, the dance, they replayed in her head like mocking echoes, twisting the knife deeper. William tried to reach her immediately, his phone calls going straight to voicemail, texts left unread. He paced his suite, the luxury mocking him now, the plush robes, the minibar stocked with imports he'd never touch. Desperation drove him to the florist first, sending a bouquet of roses to her apartment, the kind with velvety petals and a card scribbled in his own hand. Please, let me explain. But the delivery came back refused, the flowers wilting in the lobby like his hopes. Next came gifts, a necklace from a local artisan, simple and thoughtful, or so he thought. Then a basket of gourmet treats, echoing their market hall. Each one returned unopened or worse, ignored. Money, his usual fix for any problem, proved utterly useless here. No amount could bridge the chasm he'd dug with his lies. Mary built her walls high and fast, retreating to her small apartment where the familiar clutter offered cold comfort. She screened calls, changed her routine to avoid the hotel strip, even took long walks on unfamiliar paths to clear her head. The betrayal stung deepest in quiet moments, remembering his clumsy waltz steps, or the way he'd listened to her dreams under the sunset. It wasn't just anger. It was a profound hurt, a shattering of trust she'd given so freely. She threw herself into job searches, sketching more plans for her bed and breakfast as a distraction. But the ache lingered, a reminder that vulnerability came with risks she'd forgotten. For William, the silence was torture, a mirror forcing him to confront the emptiness of his life. Sleepless nights found him staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment. The bus jostles, the coupon battles, the warmth of her hand in his during that dance. He realized, with a clarity that gutted him, that he'd fallen for her truly, not as a diversion but as the real thing, her strength, her integrity, the way she saw the world with unfiltered eyes. And he'd ruined it, turning her kindness into a game. The pain was raw, unrelenting. No boardroom crisis had ever hit this hard. He skipped meetings, his voice hollow in calls, the empire he'd built feeling like a hollow shell without the spark she'd ignited. One evening he showed up at her door, knocking softly, his usual confidence stripped away. "Mary, please," he called through the wood, voice cracking just a bit. No answer, just the faint sound of a TV inside, masking her resolve to stay strong. She sat on the other side, back against the door, tears silent on her cheeks, refusing to let him in. This was her boundary, hard-earned, and she wouldn't budge. William left, shoulders slumped, the rejection a deserved sting that fueled his growing determination. If words and gifts failed, perhaps actions could speak, but first he had to endure this cold exile, a punishment that reshaped him from the inside out. The distance between them stretched, heavy with unspoken sorrow, setting the stage for a redemption that would demand everything he had. William knew apologies alone were hollow, echoes in the void he'd created. The returned gifts, the unanswered knocks, they hammered home that his old ways, the ones laced with privilege and quick fixes, wouldn't mend this. So he made a choice, raw and deliberate, to step away from the CEO throne, at least for now. He delegated meetings to his team via terse emails, parked his private jet indefinitely, and extended his stay in the seaside town, trading his suite for a modest rental cottage on the outskirts. No fanfare, no announcements. This wasn't a performance. It was a quiet reckoning, a bid to internalize the lessons Mary had shared so freely, the ones about value in the simple, the power of self-reliance. Mornings found him at the bus stop, the same number 5 route they'd taken together, his broad frame squeezed among commuters in faded jeans and a plain hoodie. The first ride was awkward. He fumbled for exact change, drawing a few curious glances from regulars who whispered about the tall stranger. But he persisted, day after day, the jolts and crowds becoming familiar, a reminder of the life she'd navigated with grace. No more limos idling curbside. This was his way of honoring her teachings, feeling the rhythm of the ordinary that had once thrilled and humbled him. At the market, he became a fixture, basket in hand, scanning stalls with newfound focus. He clipped coupons from the local paper, the kind she'd handed him that first day, and haggled gently for fresh produce, bruised apples over perfect ones, bundles of herbs bartered down a notch. Vendors started recognizing him, chuckling at his improving technique. "You're getting the hang of it," one said,
tossing in an extra onion with a wink. William smiled faintly, but inside, each small victory chipped at his former self. This wasn't about saving pennies. It was about understanding the dignity in choices, the quiet strength Mary embodied. He thought of her often in these moments, her voice echoing in his mind. "It's just life, Will." Only now it was William embracing it, stripped of pretense. Lunchtimes were the most telling. He'd assemble a peanut butter sandwich in his cottage kitchen, generic jar, store-brand bread, a smear of jelly from a sale bin, packing it in a reused bag before heading out. Locals spotted him on park benches, munching thoughtfully while watching the waves, or under a tree during breaks from walks that cleared his head. No catered spreads, no assistants hovering, just him, alone with the simplicity she'd taught. One afternoon, a familiar face from the hotel, a former colleague, passed by and did a double-take. "Mr. Fraser? Is that a sandwich?" William nodded, offering a wry smile. "Best kind, homemade." The encounter spread whispers through town, but he didn't care. This was personal, a silent tribute to the woman who'd shown him a world beyond wealth. Mary caught glimpses of it all, despite her efforts to avoid him. Word traveled in a small town, friends mentioning the fancy guy riding the bus, or spotting him at the market with coupons in hand. At first, she dismissed it as another ploy, her walls unyielding. But as days turned to weeks, doubt crept in. He wasn't flaunting it. No photographers, no grand gestures. He was just living it. One evening, from her window, she saw him board the bus alone, sandwich bag in tow, his posture tired but determined. A pang hit her, not forgiveness, not yet, but a flicker of recognition. This was the man she'd glimpsed beneath the awkward tourist facade, now grappling with real change. For William, the routine became a lifeline, each act a step toward redemption. The isolation gnawed, the ache of missing her a constant companion, but it fueled his resolve. He'd hurt her deeply, shattered her trust with his deception. Now, by embodying her lessons, he sought to prove his growth, not to win her back with flash, but to become worthy of a second glance. The town watched quietly, sensing the shift in this enigmatic visitor, but only Mary held the key to whether his efforts would bridge the divide. As the sun set on another day of quiet transformation, hope simmered beneath the surface, fragile but persistent. Weeks had passed since William's quiet transformation began, each day etching deeper lines of resolve into his routine. Mary had watched from afar at first, her anger a shield that slowly cracked under the weight of his persistence, not in words but in deeds. Whispers from friends painted pictures. The billionaire on the bus, coupons in hand. The man who'd once commanded empires, now packing his own lunches, walking the town with a humility that turned heads. It wasn't showy. It was real. A man remaking himself from the ground up. Her heart, bruised but resilient, began to soften. The hurt lingered, but so did the memories of their genuine moments. The dance, the sunset talks, that felt too authentic to dismiss entirely. One evening, as the sea breeze carried hints of salt and promise, she agreed to meet him at the beach where it all began. They sat on the same weathered log, the waves lapping steadily like a heartbeat. William looked different now, slimmer from simple meals, his eyes carrying a depth born from reflection, dressed in faded jeans and a shirt rumpled from real wear. No suit, no armor, just a man who'd learned the hard way. Mary arrived with guarded steps, her arms crossed, but her gaze held a flicker of openness. The sun dipped low, casting a warm glow that softened the edges of their shared silence. "I didn't come to beg," William started softly, his voice steady but laced with the weariness of his journey. "But I need you to know,
Those days with you weren't a game. They were the first time in years I felt alive, real. I was wrong to hide who I was, to let you think I was someone else. It hurt you, and that guts me every day. Mary listened, her fingers tracing patterns in the sand, the words sinking in like rain on parched earth. She'd replayed the betrayal countless times, but seeing him now, changed, not by force, but by choice, stirred something. His efforts weren't flashy bids for forgiveness, they were quiet proofs of growth, echoing the values she'd always held dear. Integrity wasn't bought, it was lived, and here he was, living it. The anger ebbed, replaced by a tentative peace. It did hurt, she admitted, her tone even but honest. Made me question everything. But I've seen what you've done, the bus rides, the markets. It's not nothing. Relief washed over William, but he held back, respecting the space she'd claimed. This wasn't about rushing, it was about earning. As the sky turned shades of pink and gold, he reached into his pocket, pulling out a simple peanut butter sandwich wrapped in wax paper, the kind she'd taught him to make. "This," he said, holding it out, "is what you gave me. Not just lessons, but a way to see the world differently. I'm sorry for the lies, for breaking your trust, but if you'll let me, I want to make it right, not as a boss or a student, but as equals." Mary took the sandwich, a small smile breaking through despite herself. The gesture was simple, heartfelt, a bridge built from their shared past. Her walls crumbled fully then, forgiveness blooming not from pity but from recognition of his genuine shift. She nodded, the weight lifting. "I forgive you, William. Not because it's easy, but because you've shown me you're more than the lie." He met her eyes, the connection reigniting with a quiet intensity. "Then let's start fresh. No games this time. Your dream, that bed and breakfast? I want to build it with you. I'll bring the funds, but you lead with the vision, the heart. Partners, side by side. Not me calling the shots, but us, together. What do you say?" The proposal hung in the air, grounded in respect and equality, a commitment from two adults ready for something real. Mary's heart swelled. This wasn't a fairy tale rescue, but a true collaboration, honoring her strength. She placed her hand over his, the touch electric yet steady. "Partners," she agreed, her voice warm with possibility. As the sun slipped below the horizon, their future unfolded. Not in grand gestures, but in the promise of shared dreams, built on trust rebuilt, and love quietly affirmed. Years slipped by like gentle waves on the shore, and there it stood, the honest loaf. A charming bed and breakfast perched on the seaside bluff, its sign swinging softly in the breeze. Mary had poured her vision into every detail, the cozy rooms with handmade quilts, the kitchen wafting fresh-baked bread, the garden where guests lingered over coffee. She'd become the entrepreneur she'd dreamed of, her days filled with the quiet satisfaction of creating a haven that felt like home, built on integrity and warmth. No more front desk shifts. This was hers, earned through grit and heart. William balanced his CEO world with this one, jetting in for board meetings but always returning here, where life moved at a human pace. He'd changed, not just in habits, but in soul, prioritizing family over deals, his once isolated empire now infused with the lessons of simplicity. Their partnership was the foundation, decisions made together, her ideas leading, his support steady without overshadowing. It was love as equals, mature and sustaining, weathering small storms with the trust they'd rebuilt. On the porch one golden evening, they sat side by side, plates holding peanut butter sandwiches, crunchy, just as she'd taught him.
The sun dipped low, painting the sky in familiar hues, the ocean whispering below. A young couple checked in earlier laughed from the garden, echoing the joy of new beginnings. Mary leaned against William, her hand in his, a ring glinting softly. "Look at what we made," she murmured, voice content. He squeezed her hand, eyes on the horizon. "Couldn't have done it without you." "This? Us? It's the real deal." As the light faded, they savored the moment, a testament to redemption and partnership. Life wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. Honest, full, and beautifully balanced. And so, on the porch of the Honest Loaf Inn, William and Mary's story finds its beautiful resolution. Thank you so much for joining them on this journey of laughter and emotion. Which moment in the story touched your heart the most? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. And please support us with 1 like and 1 subscription to give us more confidence to write more interesting stories. Thanks for listening.